careful you don't give me something I ain't ever had here, you know. My name's Roy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Roy.
I very seldom was told tonight by a fairly new fella, hey, glad you're speaking. I never see you at the meetings. So maybe it's good that they got me loose. I've been around Alcoholics Anonymous a little while, and I've heard a lot of speakers, and I'm definitely not a circuit speaker. But I do know what it means to run skid rows, run cons, and a few other things, sleep in alleys, and a few other things, and I just don't have to do that today. They say that Alcoholics Anonymous speakers are supposed to tell you how it was before and what happened and what it's like now, and we'll try to stay within that range somehow. I started drinking at an early age. I was, some people call them hillbillies. We got the Saturday night radio stations from first thing Sunday morning, you know, back in the hills of Tennessee. And when I was a kid back in the early 30s, it was a little rough. And Dad died when I was 8, and I was subjected to working tobacco fields and cornfields and piling rocks and hauling wood. And I caught myself bitching one time. I was working an aerospace job that it was working me overtime, and then I got thinking we used to go to work before daylight because you had to get the chores out of the way. As soon as it got light, you had to get out in the field and start hitting it. Come home at 7, 8 at night and then milk the cows and all that sort of thing. So I learned to work at an early age. I had polio when I was a kid, and I lived practically the first 14 years at the Shriners Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri, and they rebuilt my left leg with a hacksaw and a sheep bone or two and a few other things. So I had a little handicap to start. Now I got 2 of them, so it don't really matter. It balances out. But I can remember when I was in grade school, I think I took my first drink, I never will forget it, was a bottle of Overtell's 92 beer. And I don't think they sold it over 40 miles out of Nashville, and we found it in an old abandoned pop box, and it was hot. And me and my buddy drank it, and we almost died. Probably 8, 9 years old, I don't know. Made us so sick that we couldn't hardly wait next day to find us another bottle of it, you know. So I had an uncle or two that made a little moonshine and tried to stay. I had one uncle that put 8 kids through college making moonshine whiskey. I see all these TV shows now, and they always catch those guys, but I don't know, maybe technology is catching up with them. Started World War II, I was not an alcoholic type drinker. I don't know whether it was economics or just that way. I'd take a drink once in a while. And after World War II started, I was started working as co-pilot on a little airline, and come to work one morning, and we'd been drafted into the military air transport. And since I had a busted leg, they wouldn't let me have a regular job, so they made a weatherman out of me, and then I volunteered for ferry duty and started ferrying the North Atlantic at the tender old age of 18. I'd lied about my age. And I got to drinking pretty heavy. After the war, it turned into a problem. I went to work for the AFL-CIO on the airlines. After I run one through the fence, they said it was pilot error, and I claimed the brakes were bad, and I just said, to hell with it. Here's the ticket. Forget it. I'll do something else. I don't think any alcoholic now has ever made them snap decisions, you know, no big thing. To hell with it. And the medical inquiry said I'd lost my depth perception, and that's why I overshot the runway, and I said, okay, you know, hang it up. So I went to work for AFL-CIO, and the first knowledge of an alcoholic that I had at that time, I worked with a little fella called Verzin. He was a Russian Jew. And in the afternoon, we were all over the country, all over several countries, really, organizing airlines, making pretty good money, unlimited expense account, and all that other fringe benefit stuff. I'd say to Verzin, let's get a beer. Now, what's the matter with this guy? He don't drink, you know. And we were in Washington, D.C. My boss was sitting in a big stuffed chair, and he said to me one day, I was there talking to him, he said, for Christ's sake, Roy, go get Versey and get him up to his room. And I looked up, and right in the elevator in the Hamilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. was the damnedest drunk you ever saw. He was. Eggs all over him, his tie this way, had a suit on, and part of the way on anyway. Didn't even recognize Versey. Put him in the room, took all his money away from him, took his keys away from him, threatened the hotel help with death if they even answered the phone in that room. Went back 30 minutes later, and he's sitting up in the bed with a jug. This went on for 3 days, and I didn't know what to do. So I finally called his wife, and his wife and son came down and got him and took him back to Cincinnati, and they told me that Versi was an alcoholic, and once he started drinking, he couldn't stop. And I couldn't understand that. And later on, Versi drank himself to death in Chicago in a hotel room after he'd set it on fire. They don't know whether he died before or after. Happy-go-lucky type drunk. He'd go to the bathroom in a potted plant at Cotton Hotel in Memphis, you know, stuff like that. Very, very harmless type fellow. But that worried me. And later on, I was in Cleveland, Ohio. I had 3 states or something like that. And I was drinking pretty heavy. So a friend of mine owned 4 bars, or 5 or 6, I don't know. And he was telling me one night, he and I used to drink a little bit socially. He couldn't get a bartender for his Skid Row bar down in the downtown Cleveland, Ohio, on a Sunday, because all these bartenders would get drunk. He couldn't depend on them Sunday. So I volunteered to work Sunday as a bartender. And in the back of my mind, I really wanted to do that because I had doubts since I piloted an airplane through the fence of whether I had a drinking problem. I worked every day. I made good money. So I went to work down on Skid Row in Cleveland. Came in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I found out at an early age, don't be 5 minutes late, babe, opening that bar, or you're going to catch it. I worked down there about 6 months, I guess, and I made a decision. I was always great on making decisions. Tend to be that way even now. I made the decision that I was not an alcoholic based on concrete facts. I didn't sleep in alleys. I didn't eat out of garbage cans. I didn't panhandle on the streets. I had a steady income. And I took a bath at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I proceeded to lose my job about 6 weeks later and wound up in Wyoming. But I had made the decision I wasn't an alcoholic. I was a musician even back in the early days before they had electric guitars and loud amplifiers, and worked on the Grand Ole Opry way back in the early days. Got to why I had to take a geographical. When I left Cleveland, they told me, don't come back. I said, okay. I left Cleveland, went to Nashville, worked 6 months, and went to Cheyenne, Wyoming, because I had a kid brother in the Air Force there, and he told me he had a job for me. And I moved in on a pretty good deal, and I still drank and functioned. We formed a band and had a TV show, and we were all over the place and really going. And I was still firmly convinced I wasn't an alcoholic because of this research and development that I had done. And I met a gal in a music store there. I went in to raise hell with the boss because I'd bought a news bass fiddle, and it had been 2 months, and I was, anyway. We got married the day after Frontier Days, 1956, because what she told me was, if you still are able to get married the week after Frontier Days, okay. And I ran a street dance and a TV show and played the Footprinters nightclub out at the airport 24 hours a day for that whole week. We got married. And pretty soon, I don't know whether it was I wouldn't say that women get drunk at you just to get even with you or something, but we both started drinking pretty heavy, and both worked pretty heavy. And I worked as an instructor for the Air Force for a while, and they moved the schools out, and I went to work for General Dynamics, and some of the first missiles that were put into Cheyenne and later on all over. I finished up in Cheyenne in 1961, and they sent me to Abilene, Texas. And the word was out that Abilene, Texas is dry, and that bothered me. There's no bars in Abilene, Texas. So I left the family in Cheyenne. I went to Abilene, Texas, and I got in there on a Sunday, checked in a motel, and within 30 minutes I had a jug. And within 35 minutes, I knew exactly where the American Legion was and a few other places. Of course, they got some strange rules about drinking in Abilene. The first night I was there, I was in a little restaurant, and a whole bunch of people come in, and they just smelled money, you know, fur coats and minks and all this stuff. They sit down at a big table, and, you know, pretty soon they had brown bags under the table, and they just lit the whole place up there. Before they even took an order, they were half high. So I said to the waiter, how come this is, you know, it's supposed to be a dry state. He said, all right, as long as you leave it under the table. So quite an education, drinking in Abilene. And Patty, she was the gopher because I was working all kind of hours and stuff, and we had a deal. She'd go to the liquor store, and she started going for all the neighbors, too. I found out that they also got a law in Texas that if they catch you with more than 1/5 of whiskey in the car, you're a bootlegger. And Patty used to take her and the neighbor gal a station wagon and let the back seat down and grab about 8 or 10 kids, didn't matter whose, you know, kids, couple of dogs and big old floppy hats and 2 chubby gals with them floppy hats on and 15 kids hanging out the back. An old Ford station wagon and make the run. It was about 90 miles one way, up and back. And they haul load back, babe. They just load it clean to the back of the front seat and put the kids and the dogs back in on top of it and ride through those roadblocks. So this thing went on pretty good. And I had a pretty responsible job with the company I was with. My job was to get the stuff done that nobody else could get done. They didn't call me crazy. I think they probably thought I was. We needed a missile. John wanted me to tell about that missile. We were updating some Atlas missile sites, and we ran short a missile. And they had one up at Altus, Oklahoma, sitting over on the flight line. It was a spare missile, and they wouldn't give it to us. We tried all the legal ways to get them to let us have that missile, and they said no. And not only did they have the missile, they had it secured over on the B-52 active flight line, which means back in those days they were flying B-52s around with atomic bombs on them all the time. And nobody could get near this place, so they weren't worried about their missile much. Me and my truck driver went up there and looked the place over and fooled around a little bit and hauled it right through the front gate. Sunday morning, and had the APs helping us, and the Altus police escorted us through town, and Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and blocked the streets, and whirlybirds going, and a whole bit. Got it down to the Texas state line, and they helped us get it to Abilene. I had a hell of a lot more trouble getting it on the base in Abilene than I did getting it off the one in Altus. They want no part of that thing. It's about along here, that street out there, and you got 2 drivers, one on each side to go around the corner, you know. And we didn't have but 2 of us, so I had to drive both sides from the left side, and I'd never driven one before. But we got that bird through, and crazy things like that. Not long after that, we were about to finish up there, and I had a company car, and they called me in on the radio to report in the building so-and-so on the base, and I come through the front gate, and I asked the AP, what's building 2017 or some crazy number, you know? He said, I don't know. I said, well, I'm supposed to report over there. And wait a minute. He went back in, he checked the chart, and he said, hell, that's the NCO club. And I just come to work, you know. Had the commander's car. So I went over there, and they had given me and the guy that ran missile control the night off, and they were going to take over, the colonel and my boss. So we stayed at the club, and we got drunk. I had an old 52 Chevy green pickup, pea green. And they threw us out of the club at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we had a jug, and we sitting out there in the parking lot, and the APs come along and told us we had to leave. So this chief master sergeant said, you got to take me home. I said, where do you live? I'm in the barracks over here. Well, you show me how to get there, and well, I'll take you. So turn here, you know. And pretty soon I said, you don't know where you're going. He said, you're right. Let's just take a nap. So we're hanging out the windows of Soul Pickup. It's about 100 degrees outside, and all of a sudden all the lights come on, and we're laying in the middle of the concrete with automatic weapons sticking out our ears and dogs looking at us. Remind me that dog was out front, but they were a hell of a lot meaner than that one. And what we had done is we had parked up underneath the bomb bay of one of those B-52s that was on the flight line. Lucky, I guess. I'm the luckiest somebody in the world, because they would have hung anybody that pulled this stuff, you know. They tried over the missile, but they really had us this time. Until somebody asked them, how did those guys get through your security, you know? And all of a sudden, there wasn't much else said, but, you know, there was a couple of colonels around that base. Every time I'd go around a site after that, they'd put 3 APs with me, you know, and stuff like that. Well, Patty, in the meantime, had given up and went to AA, and she was one of those holier-than-thou, turned into one of the damn regular Al-Anon types, you know. And I went to a couple of meetings and told her, this ain't for me, you know, I got no drinking problem. If you want to go to AA, that's fine, you know, but, well, at least go to Al-Anon. Okay, I'll go. So I went to a couple of Al-Anon meetings, and I kept a jug out in the car, and take a break, I'd go out and hit my jug, and they told me, I mean, the head Al-Anon told me, let's just knock this stuff off, babe. If you want to come to Al-Anon, it's all right for us to drink, but not during the meetings. And not only that, but you get argumentative and you don't listen too good, you know. So what the hell kind of outfit is this? So I resigned. I was asked to resign, we'll put it that way. About a month, I guess it was, before we finished up the one of the projects of the many. I was down at American Legion Club. Me and had a bunch of construction guys work for me. We were down at Legion Club hooping it up one Saturday, and I stepped off front porch and twisted my knee pretty bad. So I called in sick Monday, and my boss told me, he said, just come out and sit in the office. He said, Christ, all this stuff. So I went out, and a couple of days later, I started down the silo, and the damn thing caved in, and all kind of fell 18, 20 feet down a steel ladder. We still didn't turn it in and all this stuff. Otherwise, I'd be riding that gravy train today on that compensation, but we didn't ever do anything about it. Turned into a trick knee, and when we finished up, my boss told me, he said, if you're having a problem getting a job, Roy, he said, I'll get you back into Vandenberg. I came to Lompoc 1965 on a Greyhound bus on a pair of crutches and went to work at Vandenberg. And left that Al-Anon old lady and the kids in Texas. And I moved into the Rage beer bar upstairs down on the ocean there. And one of the guys that worked at the base, him and his wife ran the Rage. It's sort of down the road for a number of years. But there was me and 3 or 4 belly dancers living upstairs and some other people. And Bob would pick me up and take me to Vandenberg, and this was going on pretty good. And I was down at the bar one afternoon. We just got off a hard day's work, and I was having a little beer, and the phone rang, and Judy said, Roy, honey, it's for you. And it was Patty calling from Abilene. She was supposed to stay down there until school got out, see, and then come out. And she was out here the next week. Well, this kept going and kept going and kept going. And pretty soon they just had enough of my bullshit, and they moved out and left me right there in that apartment with one chair and a black and white TV. And they said, if you want some help, let us know. We tired fooling with you, I'd pulled a few things, like the neighbors next door were plotting against me. So I got my 30-06 out and loaded it up, and I was waiting at the door, and I called the police, I guess, and told them that these people were plotting, and if they came over to my house, they were going to wish they had left me alone, And somebody knocked on the door, and I stepped out of the closet with a loaded 30-06, and it was 2 policemen. Little incidents like that, I got scolded pretty good, and that was about it. I thought it was loaded. I don't guess it was, but whatever. But when they left, and it would take me about 4 weeks to tell you all the good stuff. Some of the bad stuff I don't even talk about yet, That was about the 8th of December, 65, I guess. Sometime between the 8th and the 14th of December, I quit drinking. Now, I don't know whether I quit drinking because I couldn't hold any more, or whether I ran out, or whether I couldn't get out of the chair to go get some more. Because I remember some people coming and going, and I watched the TV, and it was beautiful color, and I found out later, black and white TV, but the one thing that really bothered me is I had this goddamn pet mouse, and his name was Elmer. He weighed about 3,000 pounds, and he'd come out and get in the bed with me at night, and chew on my ears and stuff like that. I remember the first meeting I went to was the old community center in Lompoc, and took 3 of them to get me up the stairs. I ain't got many legs anyway, but the ones that I had weren't working at all. And I didn't want to go to AA. I just didn't know where else to go. And they didn't, I don't remember them asking me, did I want to come to AA, come to think of it. They just up and took me. Not only once, but they just kept on taking me back. And I'd fight with them and argue with them, tell them ain't no way this thing works. It's no organization, you're doing it all wrong. And, oh, jeez, man. And why they just didn't throw me out again, I don't know. I really don't. To this day, I can't understand why they just didn't bar me. They said then that you can't bar somebody from AA, and they believed it. But since I've been in AA, we barred a few people, baby, Now, we might not have should have, but we did. I believe I'd have got me if I'd have been sitting there having to come through it. And it was tough. I hear people get up on podiums and go to meetings and even talking in the ladies' room. I do a lot of recording work, and a lot of these times I go into Vegas 2 or 3 days ahead of time, and I tell everybody I'm going in there to get set up and get everything. I bug the ladies' room and all that, So I hear all that stuff, Head tables. I could tell you stuff that happens at head tables. Nobody knows the mic's on, all the good little... Man, it's terrific. You get all the latest dirt. And I've been averaging about 10 or 15 conventions for about 15 years, Bob. Robert there has been around for quite a few of them, but it's a blast. And right away they put me to work in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been working ever since I got here. Now, you may not see me at all the meetings, but don't mean I ain't working. We've recorded all the major conventions, 2 or 3 states, most of them, for 15 years, something like that. We've got about 5,000 to 8,000 tapes in the library. And I hear a lot of good things. But I hear people come into Alcoholics Anonymous and say, I came to one meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and I never had any more trouble. That I cannot identify with. I could embellish on that a little bit, but I won't. Because I had one hell of a time when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. First place, didn't want to quit drinking. Second place, I think if I could have figured a way to do it, I'd be out there doing it. Because I had a lot of good times drinking. I had a lot of bad times, but I don't think anybody remembers the bad times. I don't. I remember them good times, you know. Hooping it up, running them Western bands, chasing them school teachers, you know. Waking up in a farm down in Tennessee up under a tree, you done fell out of the car, you don't know what state you're in, you know. You ain't got any booze, and it's Sunday morning, the flies are booze, you know. Gee, good time. Pretty soon I was GSR. I went to the first Pacific Region Conference up in Fresno. That was my first big-time operation. It was raining like hell. I stayed up there 3 days, and I had this drunk with me that I couldn't get rid of, and he come up with a girlfriend from somewhere, and I moved out of the hotel and stayed in the car for 2 days, and that's the way I enjoyed my first one, you know. Just the hell with this, if it's, you know. And got back, and you know what my sponsor said? Well, he wasn't really my sponsor, but I guess he was too. Old Jim said, that's the way it is, babe. You shouldn't have got yourself in that position. Well, he was the one that sent the drunk with me in the first place. You know. But I'd been sober about a little over a year, about a year and a half. I lost that good job I had at the base. They just up and said, that's it. We'll send you to San Diego, but we're going to have to cut you down and all this stuff. And I made another big decision. To hell with it. Hang it up, babe. I don't need this goddamn aerospace industry anyway. You've done moved me 7 times here in 8 or 9 years, you know. So I fooled around and got a job, and one of my first jobs, regular jobs, was playing the Beacon Outpost in Santa Maria with a Western band. All the old-timers around Lompoc, they're all dead now. They used to come over and sit at that bar and watch me. They knew I was going to take a drink any minute. Up there in that Beacon Outpost, playing that country music and raising hell and drinking coke. And then I had a shot going over in the South Pacific, so I went over to Kwajalein. I was over there 27 months. That's a little island in the South Pacific. They shoot the missiles from here and catch them in a bag over there. It's about 3,000 miles, something like that, the other side of Honolulu. 27 acres, and there's 5,000 people on that 27 acres, and half of it's a goddamn airstrip. And out of those 5,000 people, there's 4,998 drunks and me. It ain't nothing to do but drink. Even the preacher, the chief of police, you name them, they're all drunks. I ran an ad in the paper for 6 months. They got a little newsletter like Ann's. Every week they put it out, you know. You got stereo you want to sell, you know, scuba diving, need a boat driver, you know, all this crap. Looking for an AA. I ran it 6 months, didn't even get a phone call. That whole island, you know. There's got to be one here somewhere. And finally, I just took it out of the paper, and I'd given up. The phone rang one afternoon, and he said, you that idiot that was running the ad in the paper about an alcoholic? And I said, yep. Well, he said, you found one. My name's Dee, and he said, I got my wife with me. We just come in here from San Antonio, and we belong to group so-and-so in San Antonio. Come on over to the house. Well, we had it. Had our group started. He was superintendent of the construction company on the whole island, and he had a house. We used to hold meetings. We'd try to get to public places to hold the meetings, and they used to come around and take pictures of us and stuff, you know. So we'd meet over Dee's place, you know. That's how I got into the recording thing, because the 3 of us would sit around and we'd tell tales. I'm sure Dee lied a little bit. Of course, I didn't ever do it, but we'd stretch it a little bit. You know them Texans. We got so goddamn tired of hearing each other's pitch that we tried to send back to the general service. We'd got the group authorized and added the 91st country in Micronesia, and we were getting stuff out of New York and all this stuff, and to get some tape of some speakers, and there wasn't any. There wasn't any. And we had one of the newcomers come in. That was sort of funny, too. He was a controller of Dee's company. He handled all the money. And on Kwajalein, on the construction workers, they pay him in cash. He handled something like a $2 million payroll a week. Dee called me one afternoon. He said, Roy, we got trouble. He said, meet me out in front of so-and-so. And I said, okay. So we went over there, and he said, what's the matter? He said, Bob's in jail. Nobody ever gets put in jail in Kwajalein. The damn place ain't big as a clothes closet. So we went down there, and Bob had got drunk and set his mattress on fire. And he lived in a BQ on the ground floor right there on the corner. And he got the mattress and got it up on his back, and it's burning away, and walked out in the middle of the street with it. Well, that's all right. Except on Kwajalein, they got a lot of dependent women and children, and on Saturday afternoon, it's like, you know, Disneyland. Kids all over the street, and Bob didn't have any clothes on. So Dee said, we're going over and we're going to 12-step him in the jail. And I said, well, don't you think we ought to let him get his... No, he said, we're going to do it right now. I said, all right. So we went in there and we 12-stepped him, and he didn't even remember who we were, I'm sure, you know. And Dee told him, said, well, either you come to our meetings or here's your plane ticket home. Well, he came to the meeting. We found out later why. He was afraid to go back to the United States because he done stole a bunch of money off some construction company over in Honolulu, and they were waiting for him. We did pretty good. Bob got straight. He paid all the money back. And he was going to take a vacation. He'd been over there something like 3.5 years, never been off the island because he's afraid to go anywhere. Went back to Cleveland, Ohio, and he got a whole bunch of reel tapes from somebody back there. I don't know who. And we used to play those things by the hour. And that's how I got in the recording business. I said, if I ever come back, I want to make sure, if I can, that these things are available for people that get stuck on a damn island, up in Alaska, wherever. And golly, there's been a dramatic change in that since 1970. But as I said before, as I went along, I've tried to keep busy. I've tried to stay active. And I think it's the only thing that really got me around the corner. Because like I say, when a newcomer, I know the only thing I can talk about, they said before, they're going to censor me. Anything you hear up there, just, you know, if it ain't in the book, pay no attention to it. Well, damn little I've told you's in the book, so whatever. I think that when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, if I hadn't stayed busy, I'd have got drunk. Because I was really looking for a way to go back. Now does not bother me anymore. There at Kwajalein, they had average 2 guys to 1 room, and they shared the bath with the next room next door. I never had a roommate over there. I wasn't a drunk and a dope addict and whatever, you know. And in every room up in the corner, they got a built-in bar. Chevitz Regal goes for $1.75 a fifth. So in every bar, the centerpiece or the Christmas tree is that bar. You got all the good stuff up there in the bar, you know. It was there all the time. It never crossed my mind to drink. I'd go over to the club. We had a USO band over there, and we'd play and be up on the stage. And one time I turned around and checked something, and they used to buy drinks, and they'd line them up in front of the guys. There was 30 drinks sitting in front of everybody. I used to knock them down pretty good, but 30 drinks get you a buzz on, especially the way they poured them there. And I got to be a big wheel with the kids over in Micronesia because I'd just tell them, bring me a Coke and put it behind the amplifier, and I'd give away about 3 or 4 cases of Coke every time we played a dance job. But it didn't bother me then. And people can't understand how that you can stay sober and not go to 6 meetings a day. Somewhere I read a long time ago that this is a 2 or 3 way disease. It's mental with a physical obsession. And that mental thing, if it's right, will take care of that physical thing. It really will. Somebody pretty close to me here a while back blew six years. And it sort of made me a little sad. I hope it don't have to happen again. I haven't had to go out and research since. But the one thing that, just as an illustration, now don't go home looking in your ear for a bug, but an alcoholic has got a bug in his brain, all of them. And when you arrest this disease and take the alcohol away from this bug, he goes back down inside and hides out. Then he gets thirsty after a while and he sticks his head up and he says something like, you're not really an alcoholic because you're not as bad as those other idiots, you know. You're different. You could probably handle just one. Now, if you listen to that little sumbitch, you're in trouble. You bat him down and he goes away and you come back a couple months later or a year later and he'll stick his head up and he'll try another one, see. You know, really, probably you were allergic to bourbon, so you ought to try a little wine, you know. He's a shifty little devil. And so you got to keep a bat handy for that worm that comes in. You got one, because I'm pretty sure everybody's got one. It's that mental obsession thing that bothers me, and I think that it bothered me more before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous than it has since then. I sure had a tough time. I floundered around and made bad decisions. I still do that. But it's one of those things that, without Alcoholics Anonymous, I figure I owe Alcoholics Anonymous right at 14 years because I don't think I'd live to see Christmas that year I came in. We have buried a bunch of very personal friends of mine this year that died sober. We have also buried several newcomers that didn't. And I hate to go to funerals. There's two things that happens to an alcoholic, be he alcoholic or she. You can either quit drinking or you're going to wind up dead or a vegetable, and if you're lucky, it'll be dead. I was on the Alcoholism Advisory Board, and they took us down to Camarillo. We went through there, and they had this creature. Didn't even look like a human being in this rubber room. And I said, my God, I never saw anything like what happened. And he said that guy, when he came in here, was averaging eating a quart of aspirin tablets per day. So you can get addicted to anything. And I think I was addicted to everything. It'll get you. And the funny part of it is, an addiction is so sneaky, you do not know you're addicted. The mental aspects of an addiction is so that people can point it out to you and it doesn't make sense to you, so you're not addicted. For example, I fell out of the club over in Lompoc, how long ago, 10 years, 9 years? Went out to talk to a drunk on the back doorstep, get him to come in and get some coffee, didn't see him, fell over down the stairs, broke a knee half in two, 10 or 15 places. He run like a sumbitch. I ain't seen him since. I got a knee won't heal up, and I'm in constant pain all the time. And I got out of the hospital, they had me on codeine. And I'm working, running the shop, automobile repair shop, legging a brace and cast and hurting like a son of a gun, and I'm eating 4, 5, 6 codeine tablets a day. And I run out, and I called the doctor up, and I said, Doc, I'm out of codeine. She said, you are. You're not going to get any more. What? Yeah, cut you off. I think you're getting dependent upon the drug. But you got to be crazy. Ain't me, I ain't dependent on no drug. And for 3 weeks, you drop a paper clip, I jump 30 feet. You know. Say something to me when you wasn't supposed to say something, you know. Or don't say something when you're supposed to say something. But I wasn't allergic to nothing, you know. I wasn't addicted to codeine. I wasn't addicted to alcohol. I wasn't addicted to girls and Western music and a whole bunch of stuff until I cut some of it out. I would think that I've heard it said, and Alcoholics Anonymous clubs around the country try it for 90 days and give it a good shot. Because if you don't give it a good shot, you're taking up a seat that somebody needs. Really. If you're in here to run a con on your old lady or to get your court card signed where you can go out tonight and get drunk, just stay home next time because you're taking up a valuable seat. Now, there's no malice in my thoughts at all. That's just pure economic. Because unless you really want to do something about a problem, which you may or may not have, depending on who's looking at it, you're taking up a seat somebody needs. It's a problem. We've come a long ways in 14 years that I've been here. We got a long ways to go. There's a lot of sick people out there. There's 2 or 3 things that bother me, and I shouldn't even bring them up. They're controversial, and I hate controversy. I won't go over 3 feet to pick a fight any day. But I think our sponsorship program sucks. I think that we're getting too many people out of referral agencies. And we're not hanging with sponsors like we used to. Or at least like sponsors used. Those guys used to drive all the way from Lompoc and Santa Maria to check on me 2 or 3 times a week to make sure I was all right. We've got a lot of good sponsors still do that, but we're getting the drunks in to the meetings without having to go out and help them come up the front door. The judges are sending them. Schick Hospital is one of our best customers after they get all their money. All of your health care agencies. Just to drop an idea on you, some years ago when I was on the Alcoholism Advisory Board for Santa Barbara County, we had an organization came to the board with a request for $5,000. And we were getting all kind of government money back in those days and state money and all kind of, we had the money. I made a mistake. What do you want with $5,000? They want to publish a phone book of the charitable agencies in Santa Barbara County where they could get in touch with each other. I said, how many of you got? And in 1973, they had 490. I don't know how many they've got today. 490 they wanted to put in the book. Now, they weren't all directly concerned with alcoholism, don't get me wrong, but a great number of them was. But I don't really think it matters how anybody gets to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I do think that it takes what it said in the book. You have to have an honest desire, and I think that's really all you have to have. I've seen a lot of people came in to Alcoholics Anonymous, come into Alcoholics Anonymous, didn't have a hell of a lot more than that, myself included. It's not easy. It wasn't for me. If it's easy for you, beautiful. I just cannot identify with anybody that's got a disease as serious as Alcoholics Anonymous really is. Not from where you're sitting when you're still practicing, because you got no problems at all then. Come in and within a week or 2 cure a disease they've been building up for 20 years. It just don't work that way. And I think probably if they came up with a cure that you could go over here to the thrifty drugstore and buy a little bottle of tablets and take one of those suckers and go out and drink for a week, you know, with no leftovers, I'd leave them alone. These are Tums because the IRS is after me. But I don't think that I would be interested in purchasing a bottle of pills that would get me right back to where I was before. It's an honor to be able to speak over here in this great city for Ann and everybody else. And I don't know how long I've talked, but or whether I've said anything at all to help you guys, but like my friend said, it got me out of the house tonight. So with that, I'll say thank you again, and stay sober. Keep coming back.